comment on that. I, for full transparency, my daughter went to Ascent Classical Academy last year, so I am very familiar with the curriculum, and frankly, as one director, I believe outstanding educational value. I am obviously aligned with their mission. I sent my daughter there, and everything that they do. I, as the president, attached the House Bill 171375 to the specific item because when I was researching this and looking for guidance, I was trying to ascertain the intent. I am in complete agreement with our superintendent and Director Williams, and I believe what other directors have voiced about accountability. So my first principle was, if we, the board, as a group of 7, are going to pass a tax measure and ask taxpayers for money, we better be accountable. And I mentioned that starting with the language flowing through our MBOC to the district. Ultimately, that ends with the taxpayers. And if we are not living up to the expectations of that language, I would expect every one of these people sitting up here and Director Meek virtually not to be reelected or to be recalled if we were delinquent in the oversight of those funds and they want outside of teacher compensation and what was listed in the bond. So accountability first. But I'd like to very briefly read from Section 9 of the House bill. I picked the House bill because it affected a lot of the CRS statutes, but this bill was concerning very clearly distribution of mill levy override funds to schools. And in Section 9, and I'm quoting from the bill here, it says the General Assembly further finds that institute charter schools, so we're talking about the CSI authorized schools, do not have access to additional revenue from a local property tax mill levy. The General Assembly finds, therefore, that it is appropriate to consider additional state equalization funding for institute charter schools. It goes on to say the fund may consist of any amount that the General Assembly, that's our legislatures, may appropriate or transfer to the fund. And then it goes on to say, subject to annual appropriation by the General Assembly, the institute shall distribute the money to institute charter schools on a per pupil basis. This clearly indicates to me that the intent of the legislature was for local mill levies to fund the local districts which run those issues. I talked to several candidates and several representatives over the last few days about this item. Representative Baisley came tonight. Some of you may have saw him. Unfortunately, Representative Baisley did not follow our rules for public comment, so I did not allow him to speak. However, he did want to indicate, and I will quote from him, he said, I will support the mill levy override, and his recommendation, not mine, this is coming from Representative Baisley, recommend that the proceeds include a formula that maintains parity for the 2 Colorado Charter School Institute schools, reducing the funding obligation from DCSD as the state legislature supplies funding to CSI. So what Representative Baisley's position is that the board may consider we legally could share funds with those CSI schools. But he further goes on to say, and I confirmed this with him earlier before he had to leave, I will work towards getting CSI properly funded as intended by House Bill 171375. And all of the other legislators or candidates that I have talked to over the last few days have committed to the exact same thing. My general understanding in talking with them is they understand that this is what was intended by the legislature, that the General Assembly would take care of those schools. Everyone has also confided in me they do not think that those CSI authorized schools are being funded on par with districts, and they have committed to working at the legislature where this, kind of a Frankenstein of their own creation, where this problem resides. I, as one director, would also ask that our district and other board members support the increased funding of the CSI equalization at the legislature. I know we don't have a lobbyist right now, but if we did, I would be making that recommendation for consideration by the board to fix that issue up there. So that is where I sit. Accountability is first and foremost in principle, and I am trying to work, and I think we should continue to work as a board and district with legislatures to fund those other schools. Last comment I'll get, because I got this a lot, we need taxpayer dollars to follow the student. They absolutely do. Through the School Finance Act, CSI schools get money if their pupil count goes up. That is partially taxpayer money and general state equalization. If our students go across county lines, up to Jeffco, down to El Paso, to other districts, we lose student count and those go to other districts. And the same thing, when students, a lot of them hopefully, will come into DCSD, those dollars and taxpayer dollars do follow the students into our district. So again, that's the principle that I'm standing on, is accountability and responsibility. We have 18 excellent charter schools in this district that are authorized by the district. As Superintendent Kane said, as one board member, if either Colorado Early Colleges or Ascent ever wanted to consider coming back into the district, I would certainly consider that, and I think we as a board should consider that. And the last thing, just for people that don't know, when Ascent left the district, there was an agreement that they would receive for a period of time in that transition mill levy dollars from the, in this case, it's the 2018 mill. They are still receiving those dollars, and they will continue to receive that additional funding from the district as agreed by the previous board through this year, the 2022-2023 school year. So there was a transition to ease them from accredited by the district to completely go over to the CSI funding. So I just wanted everyone listening to realize that there was some unique arrangement, and they are continuing to receive previous mill dollars. So I know that was long, but wanted to get that out there. Other directors' comments around that, or any other issue with the language, because ultimately we're going to have to specific. Obviously, every cent of this based on the language would go into compensation. I'm often the person that's pegged with, apparently I want to buy all the lunch ladies AR-15s or something like that. That's not accurate. So I would like to formally, from the dais, state where I am on the issue of armed security. As well, most people probably don't know, Director Hansen and I sit as liaisons to the Safety and Security Committee, and I, as one director, have total trust in not only Johnny Grusing and he was our Director of Safety and Security and his staff, but all of the fine law enforcement officers that are either part of our local police departments or the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. Of course, many of these serve in a capacity as our SROs. I would like to go on the record to say I would like to see more SROs. That is very, very difficult in this economy, because the individual precincts or sheriff's office has to first hire those people. There's cost sharing agreements between the district on compensation, how doing those. We could put out a spot for 5 SROs in every school, and there would be no way in the current economy and climate that our partners could staff those positions. That being said, I'd like to at least see 1 roamer per district, and I'd like to see what we could possibly do with our partners in the county and other places to increase that count. I personally, as one director, would also not want to box myself out of any other future options based on that fiscal reality. And I'll be very specific. Am I for arming teachers? No, I am not. I would never, ever want a teacher to be in a position where they were armed and had the choice to either stay in a classroom or to go out and engage, right? Never want to put our teachers in that position. I am considering opinions, and I think we as a board should have a larger conversation about all options available, because I do believe that additional armed personnel, and I am talking very specifically, and I will read my 3 criteria. Anyone that is ever armed in our school must be 100% competent, post or better standards, and that's police officer standards of training for people that don't speak law enforcement acronyms. They must be proficient. This is not a one-time training, and they would have to be integrated into response. And the only people I can even think of that would meet that criteria right now on staff would be SSOs, our school safety officers. But I do not want to be on the record for saying that I never think that this is appropriate in our schools, but I would never force anything without having that discussion with the board and a larger community. And I don't think that that discussion has occurred sufficiently. Again, do I want armed teachers? Absolutely not. I can't think of a case. But if we can't get the SROs, which would be my first option for increasing our security, we should think out of the box and consider what our community would consider in terms of an additional qualified, proficient, integrated armed security. And no, just to say that that is not groups of volunteers by any measure. But I wanted to be very clear on the record that I am open to having that conversation. So, Director Ray.
So we have more than just our word up here. We have policy. Policy GBEB states, all staff members shall be prohibited from carrying, bringing, using, or possessing any dangerous weapons on district or school property in any district or school vehicle or any district or school-sponsored activity, regardless of location, unless such staff member is employed, keyword, exclusively as an armed security officer meeting the requirements for the use of a deadly weapon, which is kind of addresses some of the things you talked about as far as post certification. We don't have an option. This is policy. We all took an oath to uphold the board's policy. So I think we have more than just our verbal word that there's no agenda to arm staff or arm volunteers. We stand on policy that we support, that we cannot violate. Otherwise, we're in violation of our oath. So I would just add some teeth to that.
And thank you for that clarification. There's nothing we could go out. Obviously, no MLO dollars would be spent for that. Again, I just wanted to say that I am open to that conversation, and anything that would do that would require a absolute policy change, which requires a majority vote by the board. And that is not even a discussion at this point, but I would be open to the future because I want to be absolutely transparent with everyone listening. Back to the original question, will 1 penny of MLO dollars, if the language we approve is close to as written, go to any of that stuff? No, it will not. And nor would bond dollars. So go ahead, Director Hansen.
Yeah.